Can we talk about some other numbers? So you mentioned the number of warheads. So land launched. How long does it take to travel across the ocean from the United States to Russia, from Russia to the United States, from China to the United States? Approximately how long?
When I was writing an earlier book on DARPA, the Pentagon Science Agency, um, I went to a library down in San Diego called the Giesel Library to look at Herb York's papers. Herb York was the first chief scientist for the Pentagon for DARPA, then called ARPA. And I had been trying to get the number from the various agencies that be to answer your, like, what is the exact number and how do we know it? And like, does it change? And, as technology advances, does that number reduce? All these kinds of questions. And no one will answer that question
Mhm.
on an official level. And so, much to my surprise, I found the answer in Herb York's like dusty archive of papers.
Mhm.
And this is information that was jealously guarded. I mean, it was not, it's not necessarily classified, but it certainly wasn't out there. And I felt like, wow, Herb York left these behind for someone like me to find,
Mhm.
right? And what the process, he wanted to know the answer to your question. And as the guy in charge of it all. So he hired this group of scientists who then and still are in many ways like the Superman scientists of the Pentagon, and they're called the Jason scientists. Many conspiracies about them abound. I interviewed their founder and have interviewed many of them. But they whittled the number down to seconds, okay? Specifically for Herb York, and it goes like this, because this is where my jaw dropped and I went, wow, okay. So 26 minutes and 40 seconds from a launch pad in the Soviet Union to the East Coast.
Mhm.
And it happens in three phases. Very simple and interesting to remember, because then suddenly all of this makes more sense. Boost phase, mid-course phase, and then terminal phase, okay? Boost phase, 5 minutes. That's when the rocket launches. So you just imagine a rocket going off the launch pad and the fire beneath it. Again, that's why the satellites can see it, okay? Now it's becoming visual. Now it makes sense to me, right? 5 minutes, and that's where the rocket can be tracked. And then imagine learning, wait a minute, after 5 minutes, the rocket can no longer be seen from space. The satellite can only see the hot rocket exhaust. Then the missile enters its mid-course phase, 20 minutes. And that's the ballistic part of it, where it's kind of flying up at between 500 and 700 miles above the Earth
Mhm.
and moving very fast and with the Earth until it gets very close to its target. And the last 100 seconds are terminal phase. It's where the warhead re enters the atmosphere and detonates. 26 minutes and 40 seconds. Now, in my scenario, I open with North Korea launching a 1 megaton nuclear warhead at Washington, D.C. That's the nihilistic madman maneuver. That's the bolt out of the blue attack that everyone in Washington will tell you they're afraid of.
Mhm.
And North Korea has a little bit different geography. And so I had MIT professor emeritus Ted Postal do the math.
Mhm.
33 minutes from a launch pad in Pyongyang to the east coast of the United States. You get the idea. It's about 30 minutes. But hopefully now that allows readers to suddenly see all this as a real, you almost see it as, as poetry, as terrible as that may sound. You can visualize it and suddenly it makes sense. And I think the sense making part of it is really what I'm after in this book, because I want people to understand on the one hand, it's incredibly simple. It's just the people that have made it so complicated.
But it's one of those things that can change all of world history in a matter of minutes. We just don't, as a human civilization, have experience with that. But it doesn't mean it'll never happen. It can happen just like that.
I mean, I think what you're after, and I couldn't agree more with, is like, why is this fundamentally annihilating system, a system of mass genocide, as John Rubel, in the book refers to it. Why does it still exist? We've had 75 years since there have been two superpowers with the nuclear bomb. So that threat has been there for 75 years, and we have managed to stay alive. One of the reasons why so many of the sources in the book agreed to talk to me, people who had not previously gone on the record about all of this, was because they are now approaching the end of their lives. They spent their lives dedicated to preventing nuclear World War III.
Hmm.
And they'll be the first people to tell you we're closer to this as a reality than ever before. And so the only bright side of any of this is that, like, the answer lies most definitely in communication.